you. Oh, sorry, I'm clicking the wrong direction. One more time. I just wanted to see that slide one more time, I guess. So this is me, and I want to talk today about the past, actually. I mean, if we want to talk about the future, we need to learn from the past. At least many, many times we do so. What I see at the moment happening in society and studying popular music is a lot of these things. 90s parties, zeros parties, 80s parties, but these aren't exactly new. I mean, in the 80s, I wasn't partying then, but apparently there were also 60s and 70s parties. So what is happening here? How can we explain or at least describe this phenomenon? Well, a very wise and talented musician, Frank Zappa, already said back in the 80s that if these nostalgia cycles that we have or that we are trying to create, they will reach a certain point at which they will follow each other so close that we cannot actually be nostalgic for the step we just took. So it's 2016. How can we be nostalgic for 2010? That is basically what Zappa is questioning. And he warns us that the world will not end in fire or ice, but the world will end in bureaucracy or dead by nostalgia. So how careful should we be about this, and how should we take his warning? Recently, I came across this. This is a festival which is happening in October. It's called Desert Trip. And if we're talking about nostalgia, if you recognize the guys on this poster, you'll see that they're a little bit older, as in these are musicians that have been around for quite some time. And it's not that we sort of commemorate them. I mean, they've reached sort of a holy status during their lifetime, which is a high achievement for a musician. But in a certain way, it does evoke nostalgia. I mean, seeing Paul McCartney indirectly is sort of seeing still a living Beatle, right? So in that way, these nostalgia cycles are following each other up. Another development that has been talked a lot about is this enormous popularity of vinyl records. Somehow we want something tangible, even though we have so many choices of digital streaming services. We have Spotify, we have Tidal, we can listen on YouTube to anything we actually want and view it too, but still we want to have something in that record player, and we want to be able to have that live, tangible experience. So what should we learn from this? If an artist like Bob Marley, who has been dead for quite some time now, still makes it to the charts. Simon Reynolds, a journalist, wrote a book which he called retromania, and that is also the phenomenon he says that we're suffering from. This retromania is a signal for us that our society has a very high obsession for artifacts of its immediate past. So for instance, Paul McCartney would be such an artifact. But we are also the generation and the first society that has access to this past in a very easy fashion, through YouTube, through playlists, name it, it's out there, we can access it, and we make use of this. So how can we learn from this if we talk about the future of music, and what does this mean for the future of music? In one of my studies, here they are, the boyband Etienne was talking about, I studied fans of the Backstreet Boys. And, well, the Backstreet Boys in the future, I think many of you actually hope they don't make it to the future, but they made it, guys. They're still around after 20 years, and they have a very loyal fan base who stays with them. And what I learned from that fan base is that in the past, they only could write letters to these guys, right? I mean, when they were 12 years old, back in 1993 or 1995, these girls were writing love letters to one of the members. But now, 20 years later, fast forward in time, you can tweet to the Backstreet Boys. And they even might like your post, or might retweet your tweet, or favorite your tweet. There's a certain note of interaction going on there. But moreover, for the Backstreet Boys themselves, they are also able to differently produce music, but also to differently distribute music. They can broadcast their rehearsals on Periscope, for instance, or they can do interviews via Periscope, or Snapchat their day to the fans. Everything is possible. So these technological developments are very important for the music industry, and they reveal a lot about the future of music. But Again, also about the past. Remember, back in 2012, Tupac was brought back to life at Coachella to perform in a duet with Snoop Dogg. We hadn't seen Tupac for 20 years, but he was there. Similarly, Michael Jackson, after his death, toured the world as a hologram. And the most recent example, and yes, it's a fake picture, that's the intention, because this is leaked footage, prime news, of Christina Aguilera in a duet with Whitney Houston, the next hologram star. A very different technological development, but is this actually new? No, it isn't. In 1988, I was just 1 year old by then, there was a television show called Gem and the Holograms. And Gem was actually Jerica, a record company owner, who, by touching her earrings, transformed into a hologram. And this hologram was her as a rock star, and she performed. So maybe these producers back in Hollywood have watched this show when they were kids, but still, this is a source from the past that actually might have been of inspiration for these future holograms. And again, we have so many stars who are about to pass away or have just passed away. Remember the desert trip poster I just shown you? Well, we've lost these two guys already this year. Maybe who knows who's coming next? I don't want to think about it actually, but I do want to think about ways that we can keep in touch with them, or that we can at least keep their music alive and perhaps keep them alive a little too. This is an example of how we might do this. I don't know, it's actually taken from a video. It's from Live Nation, the ticket seller. And Live Nation actually wants to sell you a ticket to a virtual reality concert or festival. So basically you're just watching with your HoloLens or whatever on, your virtual reality goggles, and you're immersing in the festival experience. But how to do so best? By also actually just making a mess of your carpet and making sure that there's empty beer glasses or beer plastic cups around there, because otherwise it's not going to be the same experience. Very important. But does this then mean that the future of watching concerts or going to a festival will actually look like this? To me, that's quite a scary development, actually. Recently, Microsoft, we've heard about it before that we're a bit critical of them, but they did introduce a piece of technology, the HoloLens, which enables you to also interact with someone in a different room. So maybe you can actually, in the future, if they tape Coldplay still on time, sit in a room with Chris Martin or be on stage with him. Who knows? Or Adele, or whoever you want to be on stage with. It might be possible in the future. But even more inspiring, I think, is what happens in Asia. In 2007 already, they invented Hatsune Miku. And Hatsune Miku literally translates as the first sound from the future. She's a humanoid Vocaloid. In other words, a digital pop star. And this is what she sounds like. As you can see, Hatsune knows how to work the crowd. But actually, Hatsune isn't a person. She's just a screen. She isn't real. Will that be the future? Will we sort of submit to these robotic or perhaps virtual robot pop stars? Who knows? Hatsune has a few friends, and she's actually rarely out of Japan, but tonight she's performing in Mexico. So maybe we'll also get a chance to see her. And maybe this is what the future will look like, to also prevent all these aging stars from dying, perhaps not even knowing a new real life in the flesh star anymore. So this leads me to the question, if video killed the radio star, will the hologram or perhaps the virtual pop star kill the video star? Thank you.